Hey guys, Dale Bateman here. On today's episode of Build Your Success Online, I'm going to give you 10 tips for podcasting success. So please stay tuned. Over the last few years, podcasting has become very big stuff online. Now, basically, what podcasting is you're essentially creating your own amateur radio show, okay? And basically, people can subscribe to your podcasts so that they receive new ones each time you do one. And there are some video podcasts, but for the most part, these are audio presentations. So you are speaking to the audience, or perhaps you have someone else who's accompanying you and you're conversing back and forth and giving a message over to your audience that way. There's many different ways to approach podcasting, and you have to make sure that it fits with your business model in terms of your online business. Would it be a good match, a good fit for you to include podcasting in terms of your online business? Now, these are decisions that you have to make, but to help you, I've got 10 tips for you on how to make podcasting easier and work more beneficially for your online business. So let's start with number 1. You need to plan accordingly. Just because you decide, I'm going to have a podcast, doesn't mean you can just jump right into it and be a professional right off the bat. I mean, look at me. I've been doing videos now every day for over 100 days in a row. I haven't missed a day yet. And what happens is the more you do it, the better you get. Practice makes perfect, right? Well, it's the same thing with your podcasting. You have to get prepared and try to think beyond the current moment, okay? Try to think about where you're going to go with your podcasting. Are there potential topics or subjects that you want to cover down in the future? You should be thinking about that, and you have to plan your podcasts in advance. Don't just jump into it head first and think that it's going to come out number 1, because you honestly need some practice and you have to get prepared for each of your podcasts. So that's number 1. Good planning, plan accordingly. Number 2, original content. Now this goes for anything online, whether it's blog posts, articles, e-courses, e-books that you're creating, selling, or giving away for free. All this stuff has to be original. The more original your content is, number 1, the better people are going to receive it, because it's new stuff and people like new stuff. They want new information, a fresh perspective on things, okay? So even if it's information or a subject in your podcast that you're going over that maybe has been done 1,000,000 times by other people, it's your perspective on it that is going to make it unique. All right, so remember that. Unique content is very important. Number 3, get to the point, okay? There's nothing worse than listening to a podcast where somebody is hemming and hawing and you're waiting patiently, waiting for them to get to the point of what they're trying to get across to you. So that's one of the big reasons why you should be planning things in advance. Get everything set out and ready so that when you get into your podcast and you're actually producing it, you know exactly the stages you're going to go through and how you're going to get to your point. Okay? You don't want to leave people hanging, or honestly, they're not going to stick around. They're not going to subscribe to your podcast, and you're going to lose listeners. All right? Number 4, do your homework. If you're talking about a particular subject, and in terms of the whole idea of podcasting is people will, for the most part, look at the people who are creating the podcast in my opinion, 2 different ways. They're going to be looking for entertainment value, and they're also looking for ways that they can learn something. So if you don't do your homework and you're talking about a particular subject, then it's not going to go over very well. and you don't want to give people the wrong information. That's a definite no-no. So make sure that you do your homework about your subject matter before you do your podcast. It's just as important as getting it organized and practicing in advance. Make sure you know what you're talking about. Even if it's not a subject that you're very strong with yourself, read up on it. Read up at least on the portion of that subject matter that you're going to be covering in the podcast. That's the least you can do for your listeners, and just make sure that you at least understand it yourself. Okay? So doing your homework, very important. Number 5, consistency. Consistency goes with, again, anything on the web, anything you're doing for your online business. Consistency is the key. If you start out by doing a cool intro, audio, a song, a jingle, then continue to do that. If you sign on and sign off to and from your podcast in a certain way, continue to do that. Don't change things up every time you do a different podcast, because people will get to thinking that, hey, this person really doesn't have it all together. It doesn't sound cohesive. It doesn't sound like they know what they're talking about, because it's just here, there, and everywhere. All right? And again, this is something that's very annoying for people who are trying to listen to your content. So go in a structured way from point A to point B to point C and so on until you're finished your podcast. So very important, consistency. So now that's the first 5 to go, guys. Timeless content is number 6. When you're talking about subject matter and thinking about what you're going to do for your podcasts, try to make it timeless. Or another way to think about it, another term that I like to use, is content that is evergreen. Stuff that isn't going to get old. Okay? If you start talking about things that are happening today and mentioning specific things that have happened or events, this kind of thing, then just think about somebody who might be listening to that same podcast 3 years from now, which very well could happen. It's not going to be current information, number 1, and they're going to be wondering, why are you talking about this? So try to choose subjects that are evergreen, that are timeless, and will never really grow old. So this could be something like teaching people how to do a new thing, or even giving instructions on specific parts of a particular article of clothing, whatever it might be, whatever your subject matter is. Try not to make it about specific things that are going to have a short shelf life in terms of your podcasts. All right? Try to make sure you make it timeless. Number 7, articulate your words. This is very important, because if you're doing an audio podcast, people don't have any other option except to listen to it. All right? They can't read a caption that you might have, like you could have on a video. They can't read your lips like they could on a video. So the sense of hearing is really all they've got. So if you're jumbling your words together and you're talking really fast and you can't really control and you can't really tell what you're talking about, if you can't articulate your words clearly, people are going to lose interest very quickly and pass you by. So please work on your enunciation, work on your pronunciation, and make sure that you're talking clearly so people can understand you. Very important. Number 8, we're almost there. Optimize your podcasts. Using the technology that we have today, it's very easy, just like you do with YouTube videos or your blog posts. Try to optimize your podcasts so that they're going to show up more easily when people are looking for content to listen to. Now, there's a few great tips and tricks that you can learn about. Just Google podcast optimization and you'll find tons of great ways that you can optimize your podcasts, and I'll probably be going over this in more detail in a future video, so watch for that. Okay, but very important to optimize it. This helps people find it, and it also helps the podcasts to perform better and to rank higher in terms of people searching to listen to them. All right? Number 9, listener expectations. When people start becoming your audience for your podcasts, they're going to have certain expectations on how you present yourself. This goes back to, number 5 with consistency. You should always keep things consistent, yes, but keep your listeners in mind. And keep in mind, too, that, as I said, they have certain expectations. They're expecting to get unique content from you. They're expecting to leave that podcast having learned something. So make sure you're living up to those expectations and delivering the quality that your listeners deserve and expect. All right? Final one, number 10, archive. What do I mean by that? Make sure that as you produce new podcasts, that you are archiving them and that people can access them at any time. I spoke a couple of points ago about somebody reading or listening to a podcast 3 years down the road. That very well could happen, but it won't unless you archive your podcasts, because people don't expect that when you start your podcasting that your audience is going to be right there with you to start listening to them at the same time. Your audience could start filtering in 6 months to a year later, for all you know. It depends on the popularity of your podcast and how many people get on board and subscribe. So you have to make sure you're archiving your podcasts to make it easier for people to start at the beginning if they want and work their way through up until they're current with your current podcast. All right, guys, I realize this has been a long video, but I really wanted to cover all 10 tips for you for getting podcasting success. Decide for yourself if podcasting is going to be right for you and go from there. But I hope in the meantime that you'll use these tips and that they are helpful for you in developing your podcasts. All right, that's great. Thanks so much for tuning in today. My name is Dale Bateman, and I'm wishing you a fantastic day. Bye for now.